It's finally time to relax after all the Fortnite I've been playing. I'm about to become one with this couch. Mickey, what are you doing here?
Hey there, pal. So I was just going over some paperwork, and it looks like you missed a teeny tiny detail in your Disney Plus subscription.
What detail? By agreeing to these terms, you hereby consent to play every single Disney game on Nintendo Switch? Who even reads the fine print?
Well, you should have, because now you're under contract, buddy. And you know how serious Disney is about contracts.
All right, fine. There can't be that many, right?
Oh, you'll see.
Well, it looks like I have to play every Disney game on Nintendo Switch. While I'm at it, I might as well talk about the gameplay and the overall quirks of these games on this console, like the graphics and performance. Oh, and just saying that this won't include any Star Wars or Marvel games, as that wasn't in the contract. But maybe I'll have to do it in a future video if Mickey strikes again. So from first release to most recent, let's get playing. First we have Cars 3. Well, okay then. I know Cars, but I don't think I've actually seen Cars 3. But all I expect is a pretty cheap feeling licensed kids game. Gameplay wise, I'm pleasantly surprised. As a driving game, this has some pretty solid mechanics. Much better than some other garbage licensed kart racers out there. Nick, kart racers, I'm looking at you. But I can't help but feel that this game feels incredibly similar to another Disney game, Disney Infinity. While that's not a full-blown racing game, there was a lot of racing in Disney Infinity 3.0, and it seems like they took a lot and fine-tuned the Disney Infinity racing mechanics for this game. It's got a decent drift, a side bash, and of course, jumping. And we all love jumping in a racing game. I actually do. I do like jumping in a racing game. It's fun. I'll be honest, I enjoyed this game. Maybe it's because my expectations were extremely low, but still. The physics and lighting are good, the cup system is cool, and as you unlock achievements, you get upgrades for your car. I also love how it pulls so heavily from its source material. There are so many playable characters from the movie that you wouldn't even normally see racing, and I love that part about this. It also has 4-player split screen, which is a nice touch for a game of this style. But the switchness of it is the fact that it only runs at 30 frames per second. And honestly, that's fine. I think it's covered very well with the motion blur, and it looks very good for a Switch game. Shadows are there, graphics are good enough, and it's a decent fast-paced racer. I'm putting this in B tier. Oh yeah, and I'm ranking these games. Next we have a cash grab for Disney adults. Classic Games Collection, The Jungle Book, Aladdin, and The Lion King. Now featuring all versions of Aladdin and Jungle Book. Whatever that means. We've also got a museum mode, can play in full 1080p, and a soundtrack to listen to our favorite bops. This was $30. Now, I don't hate these old 16-bit games, but like, I don't love them either. It's always cool to look back and play some of these old original games, but personally, I very rarely play them unless I have some sort of nostalgia or have heard great things about them. So needless to say, I don't think these games are really for me. I gotta say, there's actually a lot to this collection. They added a ton for those who used to play these games. Literally every version is here, primarily the classic SNES and Genesis copies of all these games are included, which are surprisingly all very different games. The Aladdin games are completely different, but the Lion King and the Jungle Book are a little more similar to each other, though I had the same issue with all of them. First of all, by default, there's this border around the gameplay, which I find completely pointless. I remember it being a complaint for those who had OLED displays because of the fear of the spooky wookie burn-in, but thankfully you can turn it off. These are all decent 2D platformers, but they all do this thing where I can't really see what's ahead of me, and I don't know. I hate to hate on these old games because I don't want people to think I'm some Gen Z gamer who doesn't appreciate the classics, but I just don't care about these games at all. Like, I'm sorry, I just wasn't a part of this generation. I don't know. And I give full applause to the original developers and those who loved and are nostalgic for it, but they aren't for me. C tier. Why am I playing this? Mickey left.
That's what you think, bucko. Up here. I'm watching you, so you better keep at it.
When did he install that? Anyways, next, Lego Incredibles. Now, I've already played this game and touched on it in another video where I played every Lego game, but if you want to see the video where I talk about this a little more, check it out after this. You start as the entire Incredible family in one action-packed drill scene from the second movie. It's a solid intro and shows off how nice some of these levels can look. You play through puzzles and go into hand-to-hand combat, utilizing each character's powers. In classic LEGO game fashion, you might be used to the typical local co-op tropes. It's clear a lot of these games were designed for co-op. The game sticks to the classic LEGO formula, but with the incredible spin, and it's cool how they've expanded on the scenes from the movies. Combat is decent with the usual button mashing and some new combo moves, but it does get repetitive and feels a little looser than the other LEGO games. Now, performance on Switch is the biggest issue with it. It's not well optimized. The game stutters during action scenes and driving, and the resolution takes a hit. The city looks flat, and there's this weird fog to hide draw distance issues, and the frame rate rarely hits 30 frames per second. There's also some odd audio mixing. Cutscenes are quieter than gameplay, and in action scenes like the bike chase, the music is barely audible. Again, I go much more into depth in my other video, but overall, if you like The Incredibles, it's fun on Switch, but I'm giving this a B. The optimization just feels pretty lazy. And for the next game we have, Disney Tsum Tsum Festival. What is this? Right off the bat, we know the game was made for Switch. Heck, there's a special edition console, which is considered one of the rarest special editions ever. So I just booted up the game, and the first red flag, I'm required to use a single Joy-Con. And why is it randomly forcing me to open all these presents over and over again? I don't even know what's going on yet. Why didn't these all just come pre-unlocked? But oh, Pac-Man, and a Disney game. Maybe it's because this game was made by Bandai Namco, and they currently own the Pac-Man IP. Now that that's over, I can now pick various modes, like shooting games, puzzles, and even a rhythm mode, which has to be one of the worst rhythm games I've ever played in a game, quite literally ever. It completely relies on motion controls, and while it is accurate for the most part, it's so boring. You're also watching these random things dance in the middle of the screen, which is super distracting. Oh, and the frame rate isn't consistent, which is terrible for a rhythm game. These are just a bunch of mini games in the likes of Mario Party, except here it looks pretty bad and is cluttered with difficult to understand mechanics and poor performance across the board. And there's not even a lot of them. There's like 10 in total. That's it. But there are a few really annoying things about this game. Like I enter this mode and it forces you to use touchscreen, but I didn't realize I had to use the touchscreen. And when I click the mode, it disconnects the controller and waits for the game to go into handheld mode, which makes me have to get up, undock the Switch, just to exit out of that game. This is just overly complicated. And there's nothing special about it. It seems like a half-baked party game with iconic Disney characters. There were a few moments I didn't mind, but still, you'd be better off buying a cheaper party game that's much higher quality. D tier. Yikes. And now the Kingdom Hearts games. I'm gonna clump them together, you'll see why. I'm not gonna lie, I've always wanted to get into the Kingdom Hearts games. And if you don't play them in the right order, you'll have no idea what's going on story-wise, which there is a lot of. I'm not even going to try to attempt to figure this out right now. But if you've heard of Kingdom Hearts on Switch, you might know of one massive flaw that detracts most players. They're all cloud-based games, meaning the game isn't running natively on the Switch hardware, it's streaming from another device. Tons of people, including myself, avoid cloud-based games because generally, they don't run well. There's a ton of latency and the experience can be very poor. That's why they provide demos to see if your internet can even run these games smoothly before you buy them. So that's what we're doing today. I'll just be playing the demo of each game and giving you my experience. My internet is pretty good, so the latency isn't really an issue for me, and I will say it actually feels playable. The resolution is decent and the frame rate, it's a frame rate. Sometimes it can be good and sometimes it can be bad. But even with good internet, you're faced with a compressed video stream, delayed audio, weird menus, and the biggest flaw, you can't even play on the go. Some of these are PS2 games that could have easily run on the Switch hardware. Don't even get me started on the price of these games on Switch. That's why I'm playing free demos. But they're timed, and because of the length and the number of cutscenes, you won't get to play much of these before the timer runs out. Kingdom Hearts 3 is the worst of them all. It looks so much more compressed and feels like it chugs the most. But to be fair to all of these, the latency isn't as bad as I expected. It's still noticeable, but it's definitely playable if you're dying to play them. Gameplay-wise for all these games, I have no idea what's happening. There are so many cutscenes, and yeah, no hate to these games. I think Kingdom Hearts is pretty cool and I'm excited to eventually play them, but for some reason, playing them on Switch is a complete drag, simply because they're all cloud-based. I have to put them in C tier. It would be a far better experience if I played them on a PS4 or natively on a console. Next is more Kingdom Hearts, the spin-off, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. I have a little more hope for this one because it's actually played on the Switch itself. This is a rhythm game made by Square Enix that showcases a ton of Kingdom Hearts and Disney songs, which is actually a good idea because the music is absolutely bopping, with hits like Under the Sea. Not only is the music what makes this good, but the gameplay itself is so unique in a rhythm game and could get you hooked for several hours. The story mode takes you through scenarios that happen in the mainline games, and the levels are all iconic songs from the franchise and has you beat up enemies to the rhythm of the beat. This is so different from any other rhythm game I've played, and makes you jump, fly, and fight all while you listen to these songs. There's a ton of replay value, trying to master each song on harder and harder difficulties. This was great, and I'm happy I played through it for the most part. Definitely A tier. Oh, and before we move on from Kingdom Hearts, a special shout out to Sora in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was the final DLC character in that game. But there's not too much representation aside from Mickey ears on Sora's Keyblade. Everything else from Disney is pretty much scrubbed, like there's no Donald and Goofy, which are Sora's main companions. But it's pretty crazy, a Nintendo and Disney collab. Also, the amiibo exists. I'm in a fever dream. Next is Disney Magical World 2, Enchanted Edition, which was a game that originally released for the 3DS, but has been ported to the Switch. And by Enchanted, I guess that means 2D with better graphics. But most importantly, you can use your Mii. It's official. Disney has given more love to Mii's than Nintendo recently. And I'm even dressed like Mickey, and now everyone is dancing for me. So pretty much you run around doing magical things and collecting stickers. That's the main progression to the game, and how it teaches you new mechanics. You just collect stickers. As you get more stickers, you move on to the next main event, which makes this game feel extremely hand-holdy. But let's be real, this game was designed for kids. And that's perfectly fine. The visuals are delightful, and the quests are straightforward, making it great for younger players. However, if you're an adult looking for a little more freedom to explore, you might find yourself feeling a little constrained and, bored. Sure, a little guidance is nice, but it can feel a tad overbearing when every move you make comes with a tip or a reminder for what to do next. The Enchanted Edition adds some nice polish and a few new activities, apparently, but the gameplay remains pretty simplistic. Don't tell Mickey, but I can't say I played this for too long or enjoyed it. I can't appreciate how much work was put into this game to make it feel like a super magical Disney experience, but I find myself just wanting to go play something else that offers a bit more freedom. I can't really think of much more to say about this. I'm not going to say it's bad by any means, but I'm definitely not the audience for it. For what it's trying to do, I think it does it well enough. There are a few things that stick out to me, like that I don't love the dated feeling UI or the boring stale graphics in sections, but overall, I'm putting it in C. Next, Disney Speedstorm. I haven't played this in a fat minute on Switch, but I did revisit it a few times when it became free to play on my Steam Deck and recently released on mobile. This is a solid racer, no doubt, but let's revisit it on the Nintendo Switch. And it's frozen before we even start racing. In the menus, it crashed. Not off to a great start. When you do eventually get in, it's pretty confusing with what you should be doing. They've added a ton to this game. Tournaments, characters, a lot. But I literally don't even know how to break in or even progress. You've got things like circuits, cups, ranks, events, and 3 separate currencies. It's just a lot to take in all at once and takes you a while to understand. But after eventually figuring it out, it's a pretty fun game. The racing holds up like I remember. It has some really solid gameplay mechanics with the drifting and boosting, a good use and selection of items, and of course, a jump button. Let's go. I love to use the jump buttons in the games. On the Switch side of things, you can start to see its limits a little bit. I can clearly tell the textures don't load in completely, but it's not horrible. In fact, aside from some textures and a crunchy resolution, the game looks pretty darn good for a Switch game. The lighting and effects are all here, and they're polished. Very often there's a lot happening, and it looks hectic, but I'm surprised how well the console can handle it. Sure, it's only 30 frames per second, but I actually don't mind it too much for this game. The biggest issue, I think, are the occasional frame dips, but it runs pretty smoothly for the most part. The game is pretty complicated when it comes to currency and upgrading, which is a huge flaw and makes this aspect feel very much like a mobile game, but the overall gameplay and graphics on Switch are fantastic. And it's free to play, so if you can wrap your head around it, then definitely A tier. Next is A Little Mermaid. This is just a picture book. It's also not made by Disney, and it's horrible. There are a lot of these rip-off Disney games that steal from the Disney movies, but surprisingly after checking the eShop, it looks like this game has been removed. So yeah, I just wanted to mention it. D tier. Next we have Disney Illusion Island, which I played back when it launched. This is also one of the only games on this list that is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch and did not release on any other platform. The game kicks off with Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy hanging out because they've been roped into saving the world of Monoth by retrieving 3 ancient tomes. Not the most interesting plot, but the goofy way of storytelling with the cute cartoon cutscenes is entertaining to watch. And hey, it gives you a reason to jump around and save the day. The story isn't going to blow your mind, but the gameplay might keep you hooked. If this game feels similar, because it is. Think Rayman plus Metroidvania. Instead of traditional levels with a clear start to finish, you get a massive 2D open world to explore. But don't worry, you won't get lost. The map makes it super easy to know where to go next, and the game rarely makes you hike across the entire world without shortcuts, which is something my baby brain rot brain loves. I'm impatient. As you explore, you'll unlock new abilities like boost jumping, wall jumping, and ground pounding. These power-ups help you backtrack to discover hidden gems. There are also collectibles like tokens, Mickey memorabilia, and glimpse, which all unlocks fun stuff like lore, posters, and more. These are sprinkled throughout the game and showcase the history across the years, so if you're a Disney fan, it's like a treasure hunt through nostalgia. There's also classic 2D animated cutscenes with the original voice actors, all in the style of Mickey and Friends TV shows, which is pretty awesome. The game also shines in multiplayer, and it's super easy to teach non-gamers thanks to simple controls. Each character has unique abilities, but in the end, every character has the same stats, so you can play as whoever you want with no limits. And if you're playing solo, it's still a blast. But the teamwork mechanics, like reviving teammates at checkpoints, add more fun in multiplayer. There's also no combat, just good old obstacle dodging and collecting. Now how about the performance on Switch? Because usually that's the biggest drawback if we play on the system. The game runs like a dream at 1080p 60 frames per second on the Switch! Let's go! It's simple and the hand-drawn animations give it a charming, smooth experience. Character movements are done at 12 frames per second, which is a fun nod to the old school cartoons, and if you play on handheld, it's equally smooth, especially on the OLED model where the vibrant colors really pop. The original soundtrack is also delightful, whimsical, catchy, and perfect for the vibe. It literally sounds like we're in a Disney park. And those classic cartoon sound effects, perfect. For its unique art style, creative multiplayer gameplay, and boppin' hits, which I actually listen to in my spare time even when I'm not forced to play all the Disney games, I'm giving this an S tier. Next we have Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is great because it's free to play. Oh wait, it's not. Back when this game was released, they told everyone you could pay for early access and that roughly a year after its initial launch, it would become free to play much like Disney Speedstorm. But unfortunately, the game did so well that they just ditched the free to free-to-play aspect and decided to continue selling the game, which means yes, I did have to pay for it. Of course, since this game has a physical version, I had to buy it. Except when you open the game, there's no cartridge inside. It's on a download code, which seems weird to me because of the price point and also that other versions got the full game on a disc. They probably didn't want to put the game on a Switch cartridge because it costs too much money to manufacture. I don't see why that's a problem. It's Disney. But don't fear, it at least has some goodies inside. It's got this poster, some wonderful little stickers, the game code, and of course, currency. Because there's microtransactions in this game. I just paid money for this game and there's microtransactions. Anyways, I'm going back downstairs. I've heard a lot of good things about this. Some people even say it's as good as Animal Crossing, and as an Animal Crossing fan, I'm excited to play it. Jumping into the game, it definitely has that Disney vibe. The story follows you in a dream where all Disney characters come together in a village. Your main goal is to stop what's called the Forgetting, and clean up the village to bring magic back to the land. At least that's what I got from it. The game is indeed very similar to Animal Crossing in that you talk to animals several times throughout it. But also, there are things like farming, home customization, character customization, a store, shovels, and more. But there's actually more on offer than Animal Crossing. Many more customization options for your character. There's sort of mining, and heck, there's even Goofy. Seriously, I'm impressed by the amount of things you can actually do to your village. But I think one of the best parts of this game is the partner mechanic, where you ask a friend to hang out with you, which levels them up and unlocks fun additions to your loadout. This is a really fun and addictive gameplay loop. It actually has me hooked longer than I initially expected. I also like the pacing of the game. I was very engaged for the first several hours, cleaning up my village, catching and selling fish, and yes, even jogging, which that's just running. I'm just walking around. There's nothing special about jogging. Oh, and Animal Crossing, take some notes. You can actually craft more than one item at a time, but there are some blatantly obvious Switch quirks that we need to talk about. First off, the load times are exceptionally long, which can be a bit of an issue when you're going back and forth into your house and over again, which you'll be doing a lot in this game, and that's really unfortunate. But the biggest flaw by far is the stuttery frame rate. And yeah, I know a lot of people don't care about the performance on Switch, but seriously, this is just horrible. Below 30 frames per second just by simply walking around. It's so bad that it makes the game feel very slow overall. Also, there's some pretty noticeable pop-in. Thankfully, I can play via cross progression on my Steam Deck if it ever does go free to play. But still, Switch quirks aside, A tier. Next, we have Gargoyles Remastered. I have no idea what this is. And quite frankly, I think this is the game I'm least excited for out of the bunch. Because personally, I just don't know the franchise. Please don't hate me, I'm just a little boy. And I don't want to sound negative right off the bat, but even the menus just seem kind of low quality to me. And the game, well, same thing. This game is definitely catered to those who had nostalgia for the original game on the Sega Genesis back in 1995, which is before I was even born. And from what I've seen online, if you were a Disney fan in the 90s, Gargoyles was pretty popular. But I'm not in the 90s. I'm in my 20s playing every Disney game on Nintendo Switch. What am I doing with my life? So not only does the franchise not interest me, but the gameplay doesn't interest me at all either. As soon as I booted it up, the game felt dated, like super dated. As mentioned, the menus were stale and the movement overall was just kind of basic. I will say the art style is super classic Disney animation, but like, this just doesn't look fantastic. The controls feel kind of delayed, and the camera was extremely odd feeling too. The camera was just too close and didn't feel like it was even keeping up with my character. But something that is cool is the fact that this game has the original Sega Genesis release on it. And I will say, the original game feels so much better, and the graphics are leagues above the remaster, especially for the time that we're in. Like in 1995, these were good graphics. In 2023, when this game was released, these aren't really appealing, especially to the modern eye. So it's kind of cool what they did here, and I appreciate it for what it is, but if you're gonna remaster a game, actually remaster it. Change more than just the art style. Fix the outdated feeling controls and camera movement, and improve the graphics, not make them worse. It's appealing to an older audience, sure, but doesn't really hold up all too well in my opinion. This is going in D tier. Okay, you know what? No, Mickey, I'm done. I'm done. Well, at least that was the worst thing that could have happened to me today. Are you kidding me? I have to buy more mine coins? Yes, that's right. There are official Disney-made Minecraft maps. Thank you, Minecraft. There are several of these packs, like The Incredibles, Pirates of the Caribbean, Moana, but I'm not going to play all of them because, well, this whole video would just turn into a Minecraft video. So I'm just gonna pick my favorite and we'll review it and we can see how wacky it is. I chose to play Disney Magic Kingdom, and it perfectly recreates the Disney park down to a T. Like, seriously, this is Disney World, but in Minecraft. Every store, restaurant, and attraction traction. They're all here, which is wild to me. And the rides even work. I can finally ride the teacups as Shadow the Hedgehog. Oh, and you might notice, Shadow's rocking some Disney merch. That's right, Shadow has Mickey ears on. Let's go. I don't need any other games. As you go around the park, you're greeted by tons of iconic Disney characters, and you can even get them to sign an autograph book. There's also iconic Disney food you can eat, which you'll definitely recognize if you've ever been to a Disney park before. It's just so cool and magical. But not so fast there, Buster. Did you forget we were playing on Switch? I didn't. In classic Switch fashion, the game is somewhat downgraded. For example, the draw distance is pretty low, which really sucks because you can't see the massive castle looming over the land. The biggest problem though is the performance. While most of the time it hits a solid 60 frames per second, it can drop when there's a lot happening, like during the fireworks show. When the fireworks are popping off, the game starts to chug, and during some of the rides, there's just so much going on that the Switch doesn't like it very much. So much so that the game even crashed at one point. But overall, for just being Minecraft, it's pretty cool. Definitely A tier, just because the experience feels so magical, especially if you've been to the park before. Wait, do you hear that? Is that coming from the game? Why is a reverb on my voice? Am I about to break out in a song?
I'm playing every Disney game cause Mickey's forcing me today. I don't know how much longer I can take it. I thought they would be pretty bad, but some of them actually slap. Usually these games they feel the same and some of them are kind of lame. Good thing some are free to play. But don't get me started talking about Disney freaking Toon I'm forced to play day after day cause the stupid contract is driving me insane. Oh Mickey, please let me leave. I can't take another day, it's not worth it anyway. I've gone broke after buying these Switch games. Magic castles, but the joy is gone. Playing Switch from dusk till dawn. I just wanna throw myself in this pond. Every click just makes me dread my life. I haven't been asleep all night. I've been awake for 19 hours. Kingdom Hearts is fine, but club gaming is not defined. I really wanna stop right now, but I am forced to play day after day cause the stupid contract is driving me insane. Oh Mickey, please let me leave.
Well, that was weird. Now the star of the show, the most recent released as of recording this video. Epic Mickey Rebrushed. This was a Wii classic, and if you had a Wii, you were probably tempted to buy it, like I was. I don't recall ever beating it, but I remember at some point I owned it or rented it. This is why, despite how long I've been playing these Disney games, I'm excited to play it today. I've actually been looking forward to this for a long time. Booting it up, and I'm floored by how good this pre-rendered cutscene looks. But when the gameplay starts, I found myself gasping out loud because the game feels so tight. Even on Switch, this is a solid feeling game with great platforming mechanics. Mickey has a high jump, and there's a decent one-button combat system that lets Mickey spin and attack, giving him a third jump just like Super Mario Galaxy's spin move, adding that extra bit of air. The main premise of the game is to go through levels and complete main and side quests by helping people trapped in cages and repainting the world. The main gimmick is Mickey's paintbrush, which lets him paint objects crucial to the level, like bridges to cross gaps or gears that have been removed. But there's also the paint thinner, which removes things like walls to access new paths or defeat enemies. The paintbrush mechanic is very unique, especially for a platformer, and it works well. The controls also feel good on Switch, utilizing the gyro abilities of the Joy-Con. It's not the best gyro I've ever used, but it's a nice touch that replaces the Wii sensor bar. There are also 2D side-scrolling sections that are really polished and add variety to the gameplay, showcasing a lot of classic Disney art styles. I like that there are specific collectibles in each selection, which encouraged me to go back and collect them all. Throughout the main story, you encounter a wide variety of side quests, which adds to the runtime of the game, but it doesn't feel like filler content. This isn't just a cutesy Disney game like a lot of people might expect. Instead, it has a pretty in-depth story, and it's done really well. It covers old and abandoned Disney characters and shows the rivalry and possible friendship between Mickey and Oswald the Rabbit, the character who was almost Mickey. The story breaks the fourth wall in some really clever ways and remains engaging throughout. The art style also adds to the charm. It's a more mature style overall, with a more dull tone. Look at these sculptures. You could even call some of them creepy. Like, look at this. That's scary. But now let's talk about the Switch aspect of things. Usually when there's a remake, you want to see all the new remade assets and things they added. All that being said, I didn't feel like I was missing out by not playing on a more powerful console. The art style fits well on Switch, and it still looks better than it did on Wii. The resolution is low, probably around 720p, and even lower in handheld mode, but again, the art style covers it up well. The most obvious downgrade is, of course, the fact it runs at 30 frames per second. There are occasional frame dips, and some are more noticeable than others, but here it wasn't a deal breaker. I also noticed that the textures slowly pop in, which is another Switch quirk. The load times can also be pretty long too, especially when popping in and out of paintings. But since you're in larger areas for long periods of time, it's not horribly bad. Without doing a side-by-side comparison, you're getting the full package. But After doing a side-by-side comparison, the game looks fantastic on current gen consoles. I even briefly played the PS5 demo, and it was insanely detailed. Overall, I gotta say, this was still phenomenal. I had a blast playing through this game, and maybe it's the newness of it all, but I gotta put it in S tier, especially in comparison to other Disney games on Switch. I also tried not to mention this, but Fortnite on Nintendo Switch. And yes, it's technically a Disney game now. They officially announced that there's going to be a massive Disney experience in the game, launching in late 2026, so we've still got some time. But with Disney's new partnership with Epic Games and Fortnite, we've seen a ton of Disney content in the game. We've got official Disney skins like Jack Skellington, Jack Sparrow, and even the Incredibles will be gunning you down soon. And that doesn't even include all the Marvel and Star Wars content that's already in the game. Playing Fortnite on Switch? Well, I've talked about my experience before in a few videos. But yeah, it doesn't run well on this console. 30 frames per second and low resolution. It's not pretty, but here you go. Disney footage I captured on my Switch. S tier.
Great job, pal! You fulfilled your contractual obligation, and you know what that means?
Can I finally go back to my life now?
You've signed the contract. We own you forever.
If you want to see me play every LEGO game on Nintendo Switch, click this video. Please consider becoming a channel member if you want to support the video, and like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next.